Hello everyone, good afternoon. This is Tabassum Hussain from Strain Canada Limited. I'm here with Wayne Lefort. I wanted to share his success story with you all to give you motivation for all those who are preparing and who are planning to prepare for the PMP exam, project management professional, but they are afraid of all those horror stories which you hear that we have attempted 3 times, we get failed, and the difficulties what they have faced. So I would let Wayne talk about that how in a very short period, like within 8 days, he prepared and he wrote the exam. So Wayne, all yours. So how please explain a little bit about that. How many days it took you to prepare, and how your experience is.
Well, the preparing for the exam was pretty straightforward. After having completed the 4-day training course, I felt I had a strong foundation to build on and to go into the exam. I basically started right away. One of the first things I did was I did one of the practice exams to kind of test my knowledge and see where I was at. And most of my preparation was a series of, I would do a practice exam, and then I would do some additional reading on those areas where I found I had some knowledge gaps. And so I used I think I ended up doing about 8 or 9 of the practice exams to prepare. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, just spent time reviewing some of the formulas, reviewing the main grid, knowledge area grid that lists the 49 process blocks and their inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques, and just got more familiar with it to a point where I felt that I was scoring high enough. By the time I finished that process, I was getting in the high 70s and into the mid 80s on the practice exams. And so I felt...
Okay, so, and these are the same practice exam which Strain Canada has published you, or you have tried any other as well?
No, it was strictly the ones from Strain that I did.
Okay.
I had done the others, and I found in the actual exam questions there to be a great deal of similarity in the nature of the questions. A little bit of difference. I found that in the actual PMP exam, there were more questions that were a little more difficult to relate to a specific process. Mm-hmm. Or calling on your own expert judgment to decide on a next step. Mm-hmm. You have to memorize a lot, but you can't pass by just memorizing. You also need to draw on your expertise and make decisions based on what would be a good next course of action to answer some of the questions on the exam.
Do you think that in those scenario questions, the flows what we have done, that after this process, that is the connectivity and that should be the next step, those guidelines help you in those scenario questions?
Yes, because largely you do need to have a good feel for what would be your next step, or what is the next thing you should be doing in managing the project. So yeah, without a doubt, having a good feel beyond learning the steps, the stages, having an overall good understanding of the flow of the deliverables, the flow of the information, and sort of, I think one question said, you've received this work information based on such and such root cause analysis. What process will you now perform based on that information? And so there were several questions that ask that kind of information, but in different ways. It's not always as simple, just name the process. Sometimes it's, what is this an output from, knowing the links helps.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really good information. And how was your experience with the formula questions? Like, how many were they, and where you felt that it was a little bit challenging for you?
No, in my case, there were very few questions based on formulas. There was some that talked about earned value and whether you were ahead of schedule, under budget. Mm-hmm. More just an overall knowing how to understand the indices, mm-hmm. your schedule indice or your cost performance index, or your schedule performance index, to know whether you are under budget, over budget, on budget, and ahead of schedule, on schedule. Whether it's just the luck of the draw, I got very few questions on actual calculating of things like present value. In fact, I don't even think I had to calculate present value for any of the questions I got.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure it's there's a level of randomness, I'm sure, and not a lot of actual calculation.
That's very true. So, and how about the critical path method questions?
There was one question on critical path identifying what the float was in a particular activity. And they gave you, a series of 5 activities, told you the dependencies. I ended up drawing the network diagram quickly and then realizing almost immediately that the activity they were talking about was on the critical path and had 0 float. So it was easy to pick out.
Yes, and that's the key, is that if you can identify the critical path right away in the beginning, then you do not need to go through of all the calculations, right? And if it's not there, then there's no other option. You have to go through the calculations. So that's really nice. Thank you very much, Wayne. I'm really excited, because I was really scared in the end of the training when you told me that you are writing. I'm sure that you still remember my expressions, and I was like, seriously, within 8 days, like it is a record. Like none of my students in all of these years have written the exam so early, right after the training.
8 days with Easter weekend right smack in the middle of it, interfering with my study time. So
yeah.
It was more studying before the weekend and on the Monday, Tuesday leading up. I was fortunate in that I had the full days to dedicate to it. But it was, I'm glad to have it behind me. This
is really a very record-breaking thing, I would say. It is really really inspiring that how quickly you have done that. And though there was a very major event of Easter in between as well. And there's one more thing very interesting, because usually I recommend all of my students to do practice exams till the time they start gaining 90%, because it's just that there is no chance and they are not taking any risk, just to make sure that they have practiced well. But it is interesting that you were initially you started taking around 70 to 80%, but I think that increased in your second attempt. It must have, right?
I believe so. I was by the last exams I was scoring in the mid 80s.
Okay.
By then, so it was about 84, 85. I think 85 the last exam I did.
Okay,
so
that's so wonderful. That's
so,
thank you very much for sharing your experience. Is there any last tip you want to share with the audience?
No, just to learn the information more than memorizing the information.
This is the key. Yes, exactly, because it is so difficult. Like it is 49 processes, and you start seeing them in their silos, trying to memorize their ITTOs and all those details. It will be tough, difficult, and it will not gonna benefit you. Till the time you understand the connections. So if you now you are a better judge yourself, that you can see that if you understand one flow, which is practically connecting at least 5-6 processes, so in a one go you are done with all those scenarios, right? So that's really a key point. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wayne. I'm really happy, and once again, congratulations. A huge shout out for your success.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.